Okay, hello. So today I am going to be talking about measuring, and this is a very important part of science is being able to measure something and get meaning from the measuring. Okay, so you never want to put a number without a unit. So the number only has meaning once you put a unit on the number. Okay, so like if you just say seven, that doesn't mean anything. But if you said seven pencils, now that means something. Or if you said 7 miles, that means something. Okay, so now in science, you always put a unit when you are using numbers. And in science, we measure lots of things, and that's what we're going to be talking about today. So our notes are going to be titled measuring. Okay, let's see here. Okay, so um, in science, all science uses one system, and in science, that system is called the metric system. Okay, and we use the metric system for two reasons. Okay, it is used for two reasons. The first reason is that the metric system is actually an easy system. It is an easy system to convert in because every number, every measurement can be converted. Okay, it can be converted by moving the decimal. Okay, so you can convert units very easily in the metric system. For us that grew up in the United States, the metric system feels hard because we don't use it while we grow up. Most other countries use the metric systems. They're very comfortable using it. So by the time they get to science class or become scientists, the metric system is like already, part of their everyday life. But for us, it's something that we have to learn, but it actually is easier than the system that we use. And it's because everything is in a multiple of 10. I'm going to write that. So because everything is in a multiple of 10. Okay. So it's sort of like our money. Our money is in a multiple of 10, right? So let me use an example here. Our money is in multiples of 10. For example, if you had 10 cents, you could write it like this. You would say 10 cents. Okay, so the unit is cents, but you could also write it as 0.10 dollars, right? Which is the same as saying 0.10. So we wouldn't write it that way, but all you would have to do to go from cents to dollars is you would just move the decimal points over a couple spots. And so that's how the metric system is. If you have one unit and you want to get to another unit, you just move the decimal system a few places. And I'll tell you how many places in a second. So the first thing is that we use the metric system because it's easy to use. And the second thing is that because science is done universally, we need a universal language. Okay, so we need a universal language for science so that scientists across the whole world can share their data and share their findings. So that scientists around the world can share their discoveries. So it's very important that they all speak the same language. And that is the metric system for measuring. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I am going to go through different things that we can measure, and I'm going to talk about how we measure them, and I'm going to talk about like what the units are for each one. Okay. So I'm going to put this as 4 different things we can measure. Okay, so this is another subtitle. The first thing that I'm going to bring up is length. So one thing you can measure is length. So I have a pen here and you can measure that, right? And so that's what length is. You can measure my height is another measurement of length, or, how long your dog is, or just whatever. So length is one type of measurement. And that is basically measuring distance. Okay. It might be a short distance, but it could be a very long distance. And in a metric system, so the metric unit is the meter. Okay. In our non-metric system, we use things like inches or we use miles. Another one is feet. Like you could have something that's like, I'm 5'2". So that's another like 5 feet, 2 inches. So it's non-metric. But when we're in science and we're talking about length, we're talking about meters. Okay. You could also have like centimeter or kilometer. And so those are all the same and you can convert them very easily, but we'll talk about that in a second. Okay, so the length is meters, and the tools that we use to measure length would be something like a ruler is a common tool, or a meter stick. So if you can picture a meter stick, that's how much 1 meter is. Okay, is a meter stick. Another thing is like a tape measure, and so on. So whatever you use to measure length. Okay, so the second thing that we can measure is sorry for the wobbly. The second thing that we can measure is volume. So volume is measuring how much space something takes up. Okay, and usually this is used for liquids. So in science, we do a lot of measuring of liquids. There's a lot of liquids involved in experiments, and you have to measure the volume of the liquid. And the metric unit for volume is the liter. Okay. In the non-metric unit, we use usually things like cups, like when you're cooking, ounces. No, ounces is something else. Sorry about that. It's cups and gallons is another non-metric way of measuring volume. Volume is measuring how much space something takes. Usually it's liquid. You could also measure the volume of a gas. We don't typically do that because it's harder to like see the gas. So it's harder, but you can do it. And the tools that we use to measure volume usually are like a graduated cylinder, or you could use a pipette if you're measuring very small amounts of volume. Um, I guess that's it. Okay, so the third thing that we can measure is mass. Okay, and I had mentioned that a second ago. And mass is basically weight. And the metric unit for mass, do you know what it is? Is grams. Okay. And so the non-metric units for mass, we can use ounces. I said that earlier, or pounds, or I guess that's it. Pounds and ounces is what we use. But for the metric system, we use grams. And the tools that are used for measuring mass is usually some kind of scale. So you could have like one of those triple balance beams that will measure it. Sometimes when you go into a gym and you measure yourself and you move those little weights over, that's what a triple balance beam has, or those little weights. Or usually the easiest way is using like a digital scale. So you have like you press a button, and you could, if you're a chef or you like baking, you probably have like a kitchen scale where you can measure your food. So that's usually what we use. Okay, and then the last thing that we're going to measure is temperature. And temperature measures how hot or cold something is. And the metric unit for that, do you know what it is? Is Celsius. Celsius. And the tool that we use is a thermometer, of course. Oops. Okay, and so the metric unit is Celsius, and of course the non-metric unit is Fahrenheit. Okay, so when we say like, oh, it's 100 degrees outside, that means something to us, but the metric is a different number, and I'll tell you how to convert that in a second. Okay, so those are the four different ways, four different types of measurement, and their metric units and how they're measured. Okay, of course, there are more than just these four, but these are probably the most common, and these are the ones that we would use in biology. So that's why I'm introducing those. Okay, so the next thing that I want to talk about is converting between different units. This is a very important skill to have, because if you are talking about, like with the money, you wouldn't say, oh, I have $0.1. That's all I have, because that's just like awkward. So you would say, I have 10 cents. It's the same with, all measurements. You wouldn't say I have 0.00005 meters. You would say I have 5 kilometers, so saying the number 5 is better than saying 0.000. So that's when you are going to convert, when, you have too many zeros and it's just an awkward number. So you want to just make the numbers simpler. So the tip, this is just like a trick that I learned when I was in college. And so I'm going to teach it to you. The sentence that you are going to memorize and remember for the rest of your life is King. Okay, this is the sentence that you're going to remember. This is the trick. Hang on. Let me get rid of that dot. And I'm going to change colors here because I think that's always a good idea. Oh, why is that not working? How come I can't get it to write? Here we go. This is a sentence you're going to write down. King Henry died by drinking chocolate milk. Okay. So I want you to just picture this. King Henry is this really big guy. He's like really mean. And he died because he drank way too much chocolate milk. And that's kind of a disgusting way to die, right? He drank so much that his stomach, that his stomach exploded. And it's just so disgusting. Okay. And so, hang on a second here. Okay. And so this is how King Henry died. And so I want to tell you that each of these words represents a letter. And so I'm going to tell you that the K represents kilometer. So I'm going to put some spaces here so that I can write underneath it. Bear with me. This is a new tool that I'm using, and it's going to take me a little bit to get used to it. It's pretty good. Okay. So underneath here, I'm going to write a different color. The K stands for kilometer. Okay. Or I'm sorry, kilo, not kilometer, kilo. And kilo represents 1,000. Okay. Then the H represents hecto. And hecto is 100. And then the D represents deca. And deca is 10. Okay, and then we have the B, and the B is the base unit. Okay, and so the base unit is what I talked about earlier. It is liter for volume, it is meter for length, it is gram for weight, and then we don't do this for the temperatures. So the base unit is either going to be liter, gram, or what's the other one? Meter. Liter, meter, or gram. Okay, so that's what the base unit means. And it depends on what you're measuring. If you're talking about weight, then you're talking about grams, okay? Okay, and then the D stands for deci, and deci stands for 0.1. Okay, so that's like our 10 cents. And then we have the C, which stands for centi, and centi is 0.01. Okay, so that means 1/100th, like a century. And then we have M, which is milli, and milli stands for 0.001, which is 1/1000th. Okay, so that's what each of these prefixes stand for. And so all these units that we've talked about can be have any of these prefixes, and all you would have to do is just move the decimal point. So let's try some examples. Okay, let's say in a problem, and you will have a few of these in your quiz today. So let me do a different color. I'm going to do this teal color. It's nice. And let's do a sample problem. Example problem. Example number 1. Let's say the question is, how many meters are in 550 centimeters? Okay. And so we're talking about meters, which means length. And what we want to do is we want to convert 550 centimeters to meters. So what you do is you are going to write down the number that is given to you in the problem. So you are going to write 550 centimeters, and you want to convert that to meters. So to do that, you go to your King Henry died by drinking chocolate milk sentence, and you go to where you are starting, and that's here, centi. Oops, that was supposed to be centi, not cent. And I didn't mean to move that. Oh, okay, let's see, centi. And so what you do is you are going to move from centimeters to meters, which is the base unit. Okay. Hang on, I got to move it because it's now like bothering me a little bit. Can I move it? Yes, nice. Okay. And so I'm going to do a different color here. Let's do red. And I'm going to go from, let me move this up a little so we can see what we're doing here. So we are going from 550 centimeters, which is here, and we want to go to here, the base unit. So remember, the base unit is either meters, liters, or grams. That's the ones that we talked about earlier. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to start here, the centi, and I'm going to go, oh, not that. I need a red color here. I'm going to move from 1 to the left, 2 to the left. Oops. So that was supposed to be prettier, but it wasn't. Let me practice this again. Okay, there's a new drawing tablet. It's weird. I'm not really an artist or a graphic designer, no matter what. So this is difficult. So I have 1, 2, and I'm trying to draw an arrow here. Oh, sort of. Okay, so I have 2 jumps to the left. So what you do is in your number, whenever you have a number, there's always a decimal all the way to the right. We just don't write it because it's just like a hassle to always write a decimal, but there's always one at the all the way to the right of the number. So I'm gonna move this. Nope, that's not what I want. I want to go decimal point goes here. Oh, jeez. Come on, guy. We're gonna go 1, 2. Okay, so that was not that pretty, but we ended up with. Oh my goodness. Now when I want it to. Okay. So now our number is 5.5 meters. Okay. So the 550 centimeters are the same as 5.5 meters. Okay. So that's all you have to do. It's really easy. Let's do another example. Okay. Let's go back to our teal, and I'm going to do another example. Example 2. And so let's just say that, let me think of an example. Okay, let's say you have 2.3 liters of soda, okay, left over from a pizza party. How many milliliters are in there? Okay, so now you have liters and you're going to milliliters. So what you're going to do is you're going to write down the number that you were given in the problem, so 2.3 liters, and you want to convert that to milliliters. Okay, so what you do is you go back to your King Henry sentence, and let me erase this. Okay, and then I'm going to do orange just to mix it up a little bit. And then I'm going from liters, which is the base. The base is either meters, grams, or liters. And I'm trying to get to milliliters. So I'm going in this direction now, moving to the right. So I'm starting here, and I'm going to go 1, 2, 3 to the right. Okay, now I'm going to draw an arrow. It's much better. And so I went 3 to the right. So here's our decimal point, and we're going to go 1, 2, 3. Okay, now I'm off the page, but wherever you have a space, you're going to put a 0. So our number is going to end up as okay. We have 1 that's after the 3, and then a 0, and then another 0. So we have 2300 milliliters. So we now have 2,300 milliliters is the same as 2.3 liters. Okay, so that's that. The last thing I want to point out, and then I'm going to wrap this up, is I want to give you the way to convert the temperature. So that's not using the sentence. We don't have like millicelsius or centis Celsius or anything like that. That's just silly. So the way that you convert, oops, let's see here. So the way that you convert from Fahrenheit to Celsius, which is what you're going to be doing. So to convert from Fahrenheit to Celsius, you have to use a formula. Okay. And the formula is just weird. It is not a straightforward. It's not a straightforward conversion the way that we just talked about. But the formula is that you are going to put whatever number you have for Fahrenheit, and you're going to subtract the number 32, and then you're going to multiply by 5/9. Ugh, that's just weird and ugly. But let me just give you an example. Let's say we have 32 degrees Fahrenheit. What is that in Celsius? Okay. Oops, I think that's with an S, Celsius. And so what you would do is you would write 32 degrees Fahrenheit. You would subtract 32 from that, and then you would multiply by 5/9. And the answer is going to be 0, actually. So 0 degrees Celsius. And so that is like absolute 0. That's like when freezing happens. So freezing happens at 32 degrees Fahrenheit. And in Celsius, our scale for Celsius starts at 0. So that's why it's more of a cleaner system. And so that's why when the temperature outside gets to be 32 degrees Fahrenheit, you can have snow, because liquid now can turn into solid. And that's when snowing happens. So 32 degrees Fahrenheit is officially when you can have snow. But let's do another one. Let's say you have 100 degrees Fahrenheit, because lately it's been like 100 degrees outside. And if you have a European friend and they're like, what's the temperature? And I can't do the accent, but you could say it in Celsius, and because they wouldn't understand 100 degrees Fahrenheit because they don't use that. So what is that in Celsius? What you do is use the formula. You'd be 100 degrees Fahrenheit minus 32 times 5/9, ugliest formula ever. And what you would get is 37 degrees Celsius. So 37 degrees Celsius means 100 degrees Fahrenheit. So you can relate. When your European friend says 37 degrees outside, you'll be like, oh, that's so hot. Yikes. So that's how you do it, guys. So good luck on your quiz. And then you're going to look into your week lab assignment. And please shoot me an email, or you can see me at the office hours at 2:30. I think that's when I set it up. Let's see here. Office hours are Fridays at 2:30. And the Zoom link is in the Canvas. Okay, bye-bye.